Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be making this cherry pie. It's big pie. It's an actual 9-inch pie. It's a normal size, as you can tell by my hands. So let's get started. I used a 5mm hook for this. We'll start with the brown or beige or whatever you're using. This is a 4-weight worsted. Everything I'm using today is worsted. So you're going to make a magic ring and you're going to put 8 double crochets into this magic ring. Now I'm starting off great. So yarn over, go into the ring, grab some yarn, pull through 2, pull through 2. That's a double. Both of these are in my Etsy store if you prefer a written pattern. So we're going to slip stitch into this first stitch and you're going to chain 2. Put a double crochet into that chain 2 space. That way we don't have a seam. We don't like seams. You're going to put 2 double crochet in each stitch all the way around for a total of 16. So that's my 16. I'm going to go to the top of this first chain, so that's my chain 2. I'm going to go to the top of it. I'm going to slip stitch and I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to put a double crochet into that chain 2 space and I'm going to do the exact same thing. 2 double crochets in each stitch around. So at the end of this, now you should have 32 stitches. And we're just trying to keep it nice and flat. So I'm back around and I'm going to slip stitch to the top of that first chain. And I'm going to chain 2 and then put a double crochet into that chain 2 space. Now my next round is going to be 1 double crochet and an increase. So that's my 1 double crochet, and then my next stitch for the increase gets 2 double crochets in the same space. That's my increase. And repeat that. 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets all the way around. At the end you should have 48 stitches. So I'm back around and I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that first chain. With putting double crochet into that chain 2 space, you can barely see the seam, which is what we want. You don't want a great big seam. I hate seams. So put another double crochet in that chain 2 space. So your next round is going to be 2 double crochets and an increase. And that's going to take you up to 64 stitches. So that's number 1. Next stitch gets 1, so that's 2 double crochets and then your increase of 2 double crochets in the same space. So 1 1 2 1 1 2 1 1 2 all the way around. Alright, so I've come back around. I'm going to slip stitch to the top of that first chain. I'm going to chain 2, put my double crochet. So your next round is going to be 3 double crochets and an increase. This is going to take you to 80 stitches. And then that'll be the last of our increases. Three double crochets and 2 double crochets in the same space. So that's your repeat. Alright, so I'm back around. You just slip stitch the top of that first chain. Chain 2. Put your double crochet in that chain 2 space. So we need this pie shell to sit up now like a bowl. So to be able to get our sides and still have this lay flat, we're going to do back loops only. So these are your back loops. It's not like you have to turn it over. You don't have to, struggle to find your back loops. These are your back loops. So we're only going to be going into those back loops. We're going to do 1 double crochet in each stitch around in those back loops only. And that's what's going to help it go from this to this. We're only doing 1 round of it. So don't worry about it stretching out like this. It'll all go back into shape. Should have 80 stitches. So, your next round is going to be 1 double crochet in each stitch, but it's going to be the entire stitch. And then you'll see your little pie crust come together. So go into the entire stitch and do 1 double crochet in each stitch around. So I've come back around again, and I'm just going to slip stitch. This is now what you have, so it's looking more and more like a pie shell. It sits flat on the bottom, so where this line is, let's turn this right side in. Let's show you better right sideways. So that gives you a better indication as to what we're looking at here. So it sits so that where this line is, that's where it goes from being flat to a pie shell. There's that back loop only part. So that's how you do that. So I want you to chain 1 here. We're going to put a ridge along here. We've got to do front post only double crochets. Oh, sorry, I did single crochets because it's a tighter. So front post only for single crochets, and I'm going to start on this very first post. So I'm just going to go in. Those are my 2 stitches. I'm going to go in and out. So I'm picking up that post. That post is on my hook, and I'm just going to do a single crochet. And I'm going to go, so it's a shared hole. I'm going to go into the hole that I came through before to pick up this next post. and I'm going to do a single crochet. So I'm picking up the third post. So this hole that I'm coming out, I'm going to go back into it to pick up the next post. As long as you've got the next post on your hook, you're doing everything right. So it's going to put this nice thick ridge on the top of your pie shell by doing that. So we're going to continue our front posts all the way around, putting this nice ridge on your pie crust. And I will see you on the other side. So I've come back around, I've done my very last post, and I've got a nice thick edging on my pie shell. I'm just going to go into here. I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to chain 2 because I'm going to go back to double crochet. So to do scallops, first of all, put your double crochet in that chain 2 space. We don't want to seam. So we're sticking with these outside stitches. You're going to put 3 double crochets. Actually, to start, you're going to put just 2 in this first hole. You're going to skip 1. You're going to put a single crochet. That's just to start. That's not going to be our repeat. Our repeat is going to be 3 double crochets in the same space. Skip 1 single crochet in the next. 3 double crochets in the same space. Skip 1 single crochet. That's how you get your scallops. The reason why we did it differently over here is, and I put 2 in here, is I'm going to end up putting only 1 in here at the end, and then I'm going to slip stitch to the top of this chain. So 3 double crochets in the next stitch. Skip 1 single crochet. 3 double crochets in your next stitch. Skip 1 single crochet. So I'm back around, I've got 1 more stitch left. I've done my 1 single crochet after my scallop. So I'm only going to put 1 double crochet in there, and then I'm going to slip stitch to the same place I've been slip stitching to. And that's going to give you a kind of a look like that. So, not the greatest, but what do? It's a pie shell. No one's really going to notice. And that is it. You can fasten off. You just need enough to weave in your ends. That's it. I poked through down here. I'll show you. Get my needle. So I went down into this stitch just to pull it down, and then I weaved this way and through. Don't really want it to be noticeable. And then I just weaved back through, back through, back through. Nobody's really going to be playing with this, so It doesn't need to be super duper weaved in or anything. But when it came to making a knot, I did it on the underside. I just made my small knot. That way it's under here. It's not going to be noticeable. There, you can't even see where we weaved. You can see that little knot. It's very small, but it's under the lip of the pie crust. So we're not going to put filling in this yet until we've made the pie. That is your pie crust. Alright, let's get started making the filling. So you're going to start with a magic ring. We're going to do something a little unorthodox. So you're going to start with a magic ring without getting all your yarn all split. I'm just using a red Heart Super Saver yarn. It's not worsted, just 4-weight. You're going to put 1 double crochet, chain 1 into the ring, and you're going to do that 10 times. So 1 double crochet, chain 1. 1 double crochet, chain 1. This is the 3rd time. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now you can pull this closed. And you're going to slip stitch to the top of this first chain. And get in there. Preferably under both pieces of yarn, which I didn't do. Anyway, chain 2. I'm going to put a double crochet in this chain 2 space just to cut down on any seam. In this first space here, not this space here, this space here, we're going to put a half double crochet, a double crochet, a triple crochet, and a single crochet. That is going to be our raspberry stitch. So that's your very first one. That's what all these are here. The raspberry stitch. And that's how you do them. So we're going to do this to all these big spaces. All these chain 1 spaces we did. We're going to put a raspberry stitch in each one. So chain 1, go to your next big space. Put in your half double crochet, put in a double crochet, put in a triple, and then a single. Chain 1, do it again. So if you don't know what a half double is, you're going to yarn over, go into your space, pull through. You've got 3 loops on. You're going to pull through all 3. That's a half double crochet. Your double crochet obviously is to yarn over. Grab some yarn, come through 2, come through 2. Your triple is going to be to yarn over twice, pull up some yarn, come through 2, come through 2, and come through 2. And by triple, I mean triple, not a treble. I hear people calling a triple crochet a treble crochet all the time, and it drives me nuts a little bit. A treble crochet is a UK term for a double crochet. I'm not sure how or when it was replaced for the triple crochet, but it is not a triple crochet. What I just showed you is a triple crochet. Then you're going to do a single. So we've done 3 raspberry stitches. It's hard to see as I turn it. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to do that in all the remaining spaces. Half double, double, triple, single, chain 1. So I'm still going to chain 1, and then I'm going to slip stitch to the second stitch, up. So it looks like a little flower. Let me lay it down so you can see it better. So it looks like a little flower, and when you turn it over, you've got all your raspberries all on the back side. So that's how this is going to play out. You're going to build it from the back. And then when we go to sew it on, we're going to turn this whole thing upside down and sew it on with all of our raspberries showing. Don't worry about this piece here, because your cross hatches will cover where you start. So, second row. Chain 2. We are now going to place our raspberries in between our raspberries. So where we did this chain 1, that's now where our raspberry stitches are going to go. Put your double crochet in here. The reason why we're putting the double crochet in with the chain 2 is to cut down on our seam, because we don't want a seam. And in this very first stitch that we skipped the last time, that's where we're going to put our half double, double, triple, single. So that's where our raspberry is going to go. We're going to chain 1. We're going to skip the raspberry stitch we did. We're going to go into this chain 1 space, and we're going to put a raspberry stitch in there. So half double, double, triple, single. Chain 1. So that is how the second row is going to play out. So we're going to skip the raspberry stitch. We're going to go into the next chain 1 space from the previous row. So right in between the other raspberry stitches, Chain 1, skip the raspberry, go into that chain 1 space from the previous row, don't forget to chain 1 in between them, because that's what we're going to use for our next row. Because we're always going to keep going into that chain 1 space. If you don't feel like it's enough room for you and you need more space, you can chain 2. It's all up to you. You can do whatever you want. Spread your raspberries out thinner. So I'm back around to where I started, and I want you to go to the very top of that chain 2 stitch, slip stitch and chain 2. So don't worry about this straggler, we'll deal with him after. So this is the beginning of your pie. So we're gonna do this for 3 more rows. We just did 2 together. We're gonna do this for 3 more rows. So don't forget, you gotta put your 1 double crochet in there, because you certainly do not want a seam. Don't worry about this big space here, because when you do your next stitch in between this one, that's going to go away. And if it's easier for you, you can use that space as your raspberry spot too. You can't screw this pattern stitch up in any which way, shape. But I thought this pattern stitch was perfect pattern stitch to make cherry pie from, so that's why I chose it. That, and it is super beginner friendly because you cannot screw this stitch up. Chain 2, put your double crochet into that space, so that's what we're getting. So now, to make life easier, we're going to use these big spaces. Like I was saying, you can't screw this up. So let's use these big spaces instead of the stitch. And that way we can really stretch out our stitches. So we got chain 1, So there's another big space. Let's go right into that. See, still normal. So even though it feels like you're stretching that right out, when you lay it down, there's not a whole lot of spacing, as you can see. I mean, that's going to be, it's all going to go back into shape, and so there's not going to be a whole lot of spaces for you to see when it's on your pie shell. So I still like to use my stitches though, so I'm going to go back in the next row and use my chain 1 space, but I'm just trying to show you that you can't really screw this up. So this is what you should have right now. So we've got to do a few things to make this not get out of hand. Again, what I'm going to show you to do, it's not going to be noticeable, as it's not noticeable in my thing because of the cross hatches. If we didn't have this on, you would probably see the blank spots there, but I had to increase this somehow, and it's hard to increase when you're doing a pattern stitch like this. So I had to take a break, and I had to do a 1 double crochet increase for my next row. So you're going to try to hit just about every stitch that you can. So that was my 1 double crochet, and then 2 double crochets in the same space for your increase. And repeat. Not really a stitch count here. Just hitting whatever. I mean, try to get in just about all your stitches. If you don't want to go into the stitches here, you can go into the space. Again, can't really screw this up. I skipped a stitch there. Oopsie. But honestly, I don't even think that would have been noticeable. So I've come all the way around. This is what it should look like from the back anyway. That's what it should look like from the front. So the top of this chain that you did, slip stitch, chain 2, put a double crochet into that space. So now that we've got our raspberries under control a little bit, we're going to start back with doing more raspberry stitches. Kind of not a pattern stitch you can just go around in circles with without it getting a little out of hand, which is why I decided to do this. Plus I wanted to grow it. So we're going back to our raspberry stitches. We're going to space them out a little bit in this next row. So because we've got all these stitches, and we don't have any chain 1 spaces or anything. We're going to, actually, we're going to skip that one. Skip that one and go into this one. And then put a raspberry stitch in there. When I was designing this, I was just trying to figure out what, how I was going to be able to kind of keep it flat, but not flat. So chain 1 out to your raspberry stitch. You're going to skip 2, and you're going to put another raspberry stitch in. So that's going to be your pattern for this round. Is raspberry stitch, skip 2, that's your repeat. Chain 1, skip 2, raspberry stitch. So we basically just have to kind of set our baseline again after doing this increase row. And that's all we're doing here, is just setting a base. Chain 1, skip 2, raspberry stitch. So I've come back around to the beginning. I put my last raspberry stitch in there. This first chain 2, I'm going to go to the top of that and I do my slip stitch. So this is what you have so far. That's the front. This will all stand back up again. Kind of squishy from me laying it down, but this is what you have. You obviously can see what you have. And again, don't worry about this. It's not going to be noticeable because of your cross hatches on your cherry pie. So, put your double crochet in your chain 2 space. So now we're going back to the spaces in between. So now you're just going to be making, I'm going to use the stitch. You can use the space if you want. So we're just going to be using the spaces in between. Don't worry about this first one because we got a raspberry stitch right there. So we're just going to skip past that. I'm going to go into the stitch. So as long as your raspberries are in between your raspberries, it doesn't matter if you use the space or if you use the stitch. It's all up to you. Chain 1, go to your next space. So we're going to do this for 3 more rows. Don't forget to chain 1. So you are chaining 1 to use for your next row, because if you don't do that, you're not going to have anywhere to put your next raspberry stitch. You just really want them to be in between the other raspberry stitches. So I only did 2 rows of the raspberry stitch. And I think I'm going to quit only because I put it over my pie shell and it fits. Actually, it hangs over just a little bit. over my pie shell. And I still got to do one more row of just regular stitches, just so it's easier to sew this on with. And I don't think I want it as full as this one, but if you want yours to be as full as this cherry pie, you can do your third row. I already have one that's ginormous, so I just don't want mine as full. So the last row is just going to be one double crochet, and you know what? You can do singles actually if you want. I think single crochets are probably the way to go here. So let's change my design. Mid-video. And let's do, we just need stitches to sew, to help us sew. And these are just not likely going to work out very well. But it's up to you. Single crochets or double crochets. Single crochets is going to tighten this right up. So if you find that this is way bigger than you need it, then by all means, you don't have to do double crochet. Actually, that looks better. Single crochet looks way better. Oops. Now for these, because it's cherry and we have raspberry stitches, you're gonna have to probably pull up on a couple of your singles just to bring it to the same level for sewing purposes. But just kind of pull everything tight and one single crochet in each stitch. And when it comes to this space, you can either go into the stitch, or you can go just into the space. If you're going to go into the space, just do 2. But I just find that it might open up this hole a little bit more if you did that. So I personally going to go into the stitch. Now if you do go to my Etsy shop and you find this on my Etsy shop, obviously it's going to be the design before I just changed it mid-video. Or not mid-video, but you know, it's going to be the double crochet all the way around, and it's going to be 3 rows of the raspberry, even though I just did 2 rows, so it's not all going to be matchy-matchy. If you did go, some people like to buy my Etsy patterns and then use the video to get through it. So if that's what you've done, just know that this change was not intentional. It was just something I decided at the last minute that I was gonna do or not do. So I'm all the way around. That was a little time consuming. You can slip stitch anywhere you want. Fasten off. You're going to need a sewing tail, obviously. You got to sew it to the pie shell. You probably have too much as usual. But it's always better to have too much than not enough. There we go, your cherry pie filling. So, close your middle. We're going to stick this down through to weave back here. You can weave or you can just do a knot. I don't really have a lot to weave with, so I'm just going to do a knot so it doesn't open up. I'm not going to cut all of it off because I don't want it to go like my knot to pull through. So there we go, your cherry pie filling. So we've got our crust that we need to stuff. So just kind of pull your stuffing apart. You want to push this out to the side, but you don't want it to be clumpy, so it just kind of needs to be pulled apart. You can put in as much as you like. I started with that and then I continued to fill it after I sewed some of this on. So we need to sew it on tucked inside. So find where your thing starts. So if you did the pumpkin pie with me, then you know that we're gonna sew as close to this. You shouldn't see it even if this is red. My pumpkin pie was a rust color and you couldn't really see it, but really keep to the top of under here so that it's not noticeable. And this is going to be absolutely time consuming. So I'm going to go in, because I want it to be tucked down, I'm going to go in and out of here so it stays down. Then I'm going to go down into the pie again before I come out. So it's going to kind of help hold it tucked in. And then pull tight. So when I pull, that's all you're going to see is that tiny little line right there. So it won't be noticeable. If you know of an easier way to sew this on, then by all means you can do that. So I'm just grabbing some of the pie. I'm not going stitch for stitch because then there'd be no point on trying to keep it tucked in. So I just got my last bit here, and then I'm finished. And then you can just come back up here and you can weave. So you can't really see your red. Maybe a couple of places. So I didn't overstuff. Alrighty, so this is your cherry pie. You're probably going to have to move some stuffing around. So the only thing left, fix my thing. The only thing left are the cross hatches. So I'm going to set my pie aside. So the cross hatches, I used a 4mm or G hook. We have to make 6 of these, so I'm going to do one with you and then I'll leave you to do the other ones. So make a slip knot and you're going to chain 35. That's my 35. Not in this stitch, but this very next stitch, you're going to put a half double crochet and you're going to half double crochet all the way back up. So we're using 33 of these 35 stitches. So if you don't know what a half double crochet is, You're just going to yarn over, go into the stitch, pull through, and then pull through all 3 of your loops. So I have exaggerated my cherries, are obviously higher than a normal cherry pie would be. I've exaggerated it for the project. These cross hatches will have to be stretched around it. I did that purposely to make it look like the cherry pie is oozing out between the cross hatches. So I just wanted to make it as realistic as I could. So this is it. Once you get to the end, you can just fasten off and then hide your straggler and make sure you keep a sewing tail, obviously. That'll be for the one end. You'll have to cut a sewing tail for the other end. Make 5 more, so you need 6 altogether. I will put my pattern up on the screen, and I will see you on the other side. So I've got all of mine done. So this is really gonna stretch, because like I said, I want it to look like the pie is oozing out from between. So you just gotta kind of lay them out where you want them. Sew the middle one on first, because you want that to cover your circle. So that's my first suggestion. Alright, so this one I basket weaved, so I went over and under and over. This cherry pie, I just did a regular 3 on top, 3 on the bottom. I didn't basket weave. So there's your 2 choices. It looks pretty similar. Like it didn't really make that much of a difference to basket weave. But there's your choices anyway. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you in the next video.